So, decided that I wanted to put a zero tolerance throat plate in my Craftsman 10-inch saw, and I saw online a couple people tried this. They started out with some thin stock. I started out with a piece of 3/4. This is poplar. Kind of found where the high points were. Got a gross amount of hogging done out of it, and then piece by piece kind of leveled it down to this tab, into this tab. Found my way around these 3 tabs. If you notice, I kind of put a little bit of a taper on the edge on both sides. So I ran it flat through the router, and then cleaned up the edge with just a hand plane. Give it a little bit of that taper there. So when it drops down in, it's pretty solid. I work the thicknesses here. Actually, I went too thin and put a replacement piece back in here. But you can see the red marks. I used a marker on the high points, dropped my my throat plate down in, found where it was hitting, and through trial and error was able to get it down pretty clean. It's within 1/1000th on both ends. This corner here drops down just a little bit, so I'll play with that. Maybe shim it just a hair with a piece of shaving of the poplar. The problem with this saw is it rides pretty high up in the throat plate. So when you go to work this, you can only get it about halfway down in before you have to start it and start your cut. You can see a little bit of an edge here to here, where the first time I had it, it was much closer over to the left, tighter to the left, and then eventually it dropped down in. So I don't have exactly zero tolerance. It's probably about 5/1000ths on this edge here. But I'm pretty happy with it. It turned out pretty well. I put 2 finger holes in. It comes out pretty easily. A number of folks like myself don't do a lot of angle cuts, so I'm going to keep this in here most of the time. These are 5mm machine screws, number 5mm by 30, 5mm by 24, almost the same as a 1024 machine screw. I had to go over to Lowe's to find these, but I cover up the finger holes with some blue tape on the bottom side, so I get a little bit better clearance of my dust. I'm cutting some hardwood for some cutting boards, and the reason I wanted a zero tolerance plate was to get some thinner, cleaner, thin strips. So I actually worked one up tonight. You can see over on the bench, and I was able to get down to about 1/4 inch, fairly clean, and then ran them through the surface planer to get them down to 1/8. In a couple of places, it's maple, mahogany, and walnut. And so that's the second one that I've made. And the first one was kind of a trial and error basis, and as is typical with this saw, the throat plate opening goes from this edge all the way over, and so the wood had a big tendency to drop down, and it just didn't feel safe. So I told my wife before I bought a new saw, which I need to anyways, that I would try putting a throat plate in. I was a little concerned there'd be some kickback, and it went pretty well. Like I said, having to cut it before it would drop all the way down in was a little problematic, but it worked. I saw online somebody else took a couple of pieces of scrap. I just happened to have a good channel here. I used the 2x4 on one side and another piece of a sample of a cabinet on the other, which kept it pretty close to where I needed to start. Had another piece of wood on top to kind of hold everything down. I stood off to the side, started the blade, and brought it up into the wood. It went pretty well. Pretty happy with it. I'll stick with it, and if I come up with any other changes to it, I don't think I'm going to make a second one at this point in time. I'm pretty happy with the way it turned out. If I hadn't been able to clean clean up these ends, I would have started over with a different piece. But that's my 0 tolerance throat plate for my Craftsman portable table saw.